And welcome back to another episode of Fight Night Picks Kicks. As always, check out our website, fightnightpicks.com. We got a lot of great info and stuff over on the site that you're not going to find here on YouTube, including, hey, written up interview with Kai Kamaka. You can check out Joshua Hart's full card betting guide. What about today's episode of Early Stoppage? Who's going to the UFC Hall of Fame? Which current fighters? But if you do have a look at that full card betting guide, just a shame that Gabriel Benitez decided to totally miss weight and ruin Joshua Hart's best bets. We also have the store over on the shop. You can check out some of the Fight Night Picks merch that the boys wear on the show, including the Fight Night Picks long sleeve shirt, but that baseball jersey. I mean, we all love baseball, right? Right? Who's with me? Check it out, fightnightpicks.com, and as we always say, let's get into it. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick on any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minkah Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clelin Ferrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allen.
Oh boy, and we have a great card coming up this weekend. Tonight, UFC Vegas 25, already 25 cards in Vegas. As always, one half your hosting duo, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. You can find us, as always, at Fight Night Picks. And Matt, with me, as always, at Matt Allen FNP. I want to thank everybody for joining in this weekend. Baza Raphael saying FNP time again. Yeah. William is saying fight of the night, Swanson Chikadze. That was one of the two that we have, and we'll talk about that coming up. But Todd's looking forward to it. We got Chris Martin. Chris shouts to Coldplay. You guys are still making bangers. Matt, overall, great card. For me, there's a lot of pop and popcorn fights. I don't have a whole lot of action going on this weekend, if I'm being totally honest. But I'm really liking the slate of cards and that we have coming up shortly. But the night of fights that we have tonight.
I'm really excited for tonight. Really just the whole card in general. But it feels like the light heavyweight division, it's been kind of put on hold lately. Jan Blachowicz gets the belt, defense against the middleweight, and then we've just had a bunch of fighters who all feel like they've been a fight away from the title shot. Now, luckily, Glover Teixeira is the next person in line at 31 years of age. Glad that they're giving him that opportunity now before he got even older. But it does feel like this fight should at least tell us who's next in line for that title. And 205, kind of one of those, at least traditionally, glorious divisions in the UFC. So should be really interesting to see who will be taking this moving forward.
Isaac helping us out, saying smash the like button in this wildlife. Also helping out the channel. And you can help out the channel if you hit up the super chat saying let's get this started. And let's get this started in here. Let's get this started. The first iteration of that song wasn't the best, but Matt, ultimately, like I said, I love this card. If this is your first time tuning in with Fight Night Picks, we certainly appreciate you. I've got to turn up the brightness just a little bit. But overall, Matt, I mean, we talked about it. Fight of the night, we had Swanson, and we had another really good pick. So let's flip it on over to our Fight of the Night screen. It's always presented by Manscaped. I'll dip out to turn up the brightness, but you can talk about it a little bit because, as was said, Cub Swanson, Giga Chikadze, what a great fight that is.
I mean, how could you not pick this fight to be nominated for your fight of the night? Just think of all those classic wars that Cub Swanson's already been involved with. You have the crazy fights with the likes of Max Holloway, Duho Choi, Jeremy Stevens. Like, he's been in there for a long time with the absolute best of the best in the division, and that's really what we care about at the end of the day. We go through a lot of fighters' records, and yeah, we pick apart their wins and their losses, but when you look at Cub Swanson's record, there's one thing that everyone has in common. They're all top-level fighters, and that's really all Cub Swanson's ever fought since he's really joined the UFC or I guess WME umbrella. So you've always got to get excited for a Cub Swanson fight.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. I mean, it is the definition of a striker's paradise. When it comes to being a well-rounded fighter, you look over at Cub Swanson. Alex, to answer your question, thanks for the super chat. It's gonna be May, if we're gonna quote some early 2000s pop bands, and I guess this is the show music references, but I love this fight. I mean, Giga Chikadze, great striker. If you do go back to his last loss, the Austin Springer fight, it was Giga Grappler, and it was really weird. So we'll see what happens in this one, but I love the fight. And Brett Z saying, always bet on the older brother. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe in the future. Who knows?
Who knows?
Sean Strickland taking on Krzysztof Jotco. That was another pick for possible fight of the night. Krzysztof really kind of said he relishes the underground role. Like, he wants to go out there and kind of remind people of who he is. But the guy's on a 3-fight win streak. It's kind of funny. So Krzysztof Jotco taking on Sean Strickland. A couple of other fighters that are very good grapplers. For Krzysztof, he had some knockouts early on in his UFC tenure. It had been a while. He's looked good in those last 3. I love this fight.
I'm going to quote The Weeknd when I talk about this fight. Go tell your friends about it, because this fight really is one that anyone can get excited for. We not only have 2 primary strikers in this fight, but 2 strikers who really get it done in very different ways. And I know we'll break it down a little bit more later on into the video, but with Krzysztof Jotco, you have a guy who made his way all the way up into the rankings at middleweight. That tells you what kind of a ceiling this guy has. And for Sean Strickland, whether it's been 170 pounds or 185 pounds, you can always trust on him to have insane cardio, really good boxing. He's just kind of a bigger version of Tim Means at this point, and I think that's a fighter that everyone get excited about.
Should be a great one. I love this fight. I mean, to be completely honest with you, this is my favorite fight on this entire card. So like I said, I mean, if this is your first time with us with Question Mark Kicks, hey, make sure you toss the like, toss the sub, because we've only got about a quarter of the amount of likes to the amount of people that are watching. And if you want to check out some more of the great Fight Night Picks content, you can find it on the website, fightnightpicks.com. Ian Wynn just joined the channel in the last week. He's been doing great work over there. He had a great write-up after last weekend's main event. You can also find some of the merch. Look, I'm rocking the Mike Napoli swag from like 2013 when it was just all open jersey and chain. But you can check out some of the stuff over there. We also have the MLG jerseys. I mean, we got the Under Armour shirts. Geez, if I can get it right. That's a pretty good one to have as well. So check it out over there. Phoenix is saying LMFAO the way everyone's lighting this up. Jotco comes out, gets a unanimous decision. Emiliano's also saying he gets the upset. It's a tricky one. So if I'm being totally honest, like I said, I don't have a lot of cheddar riding on this card. I'm just going to enjoy it for what it's worth. Kind of a later card, which is kind of interesting, and you did lose a fight. Gabriel Benitez missing weight, taking on Jonathan Pearce. And listen, we got to say this. Kudos to Jonathan Pearce for not taking the fight. Like, hey, probably the right decision career-wise.
Oh, without a doubt. When someone misses by that much, you really don't gain much by fighting that person. You either beat someone who showed up unprepared and unready, or you lose to someone who showed up unprepared and unready. So it really doesn't do that much for your career, so good on JSP.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens overall. Looking like Benitez all week wasn't really ready on the scale. I'd read a couple of things on the Underground Whisper Network being, well, Twitter this time. But Matt, ultimately, great card. What we're going to do with Question Mark Kicks, we go all the way from the bottom, all the way up to the top. And Adnan saying, guys, please like the video. We're all waiting for this video. Well, hey, listen, we appreciate you. No, please, how's it going? You got to say hi to Matt, too. Make him feel good.
Ow.
Matt, let's kick this card off. We have Luke Sanders taking on Felipe Colares. And I said this at the start of the week. And again, I'm not really being a vessel of confidence to start this video off. But this was the toughest fight to try and even get a read on. Luke Sanders, you talked about it in the original prediction video. He started off in Strikeforce. His UFC record's wonky. His level of competition's really weird. He beat an end-of-the-road Renan Barão. And then he loses to Nate Maness his last time out, where he went out headhunting. And he had a little bit of success. But Nate Maness, just kind of the younger guy, the more, the squirrelier guy, because you have to always worry about Maness's grappling. Luke Sanders, win one, lose one. Not all that great. And then if you have a look at Felipe Colares, this is a guy that so far in the UFC hasn't been the greatest run. He's got 1 win to 2 losses, and the win bookended by the losses. And if you even look at the win that he had over Domingo Pilarte, a lot of MMA media on MMA decisions, and I put a lot of stock into those MMA decisions when you compare it to the judges, because you only have 3 judges. But you can have, 24 MMA media members who watch fights consistently voting on those. 10 of them had the fight for Pilarte to 2 that had it for Colares. Just unfortunate that you had 2 of the 3 judges score it for Colares. So for Colares, not really the best to run, not really the best of competition, former Jungle Fights champ, Walid Ismail's favorite, and he's coming in here taking on Tennessee's own Luke Sanders, now training out of Arizona with Fight Ready MMA. What's your final take on this fight?
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably Tennessee, it says, fool me one time, shame on me. Well, you fooled me. Can't get fooled again. And that's really been the story with me predicting Luke Sanders fights. Because in my brain, I do think of him as, hey, he's more than just experienced in the fact that he has a number of fights, which is weird because when you look at his record, he doesn't really have that many fights. He's just been around for so long. And experience is something that I know we're going to talk about a lot more when it comes to the main event. But experience is normally something that we look at and it's like, okay, this guy's either won his fights or he's lost, learned from it, and he's had to become a different fighter because of those losses. Luke Sanders is the exact same fighter he was before he ever lost a fight, and he's probably going to stay that same fighter until he does retire, because you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and I feel like Sanders is one of those cases. And even though I've said all that, I still think this is one of his more winnable fights in the UFC. I'm not saying either guy is going to go on and have these great luxurious careers by any means, and I honestly think this is more suited for a contender series fight, but I'm going to stick with Luke Sanders.
So going over to the comments section, Chris Martin again, for some reason I can't even think of a Coldplay song, but he's going with Sanders has poor fight IQ. Sometimes it's not the best, and Brett Z following it up with Sanders finds a way to lose. He always does. AI saying Sanders can't wrestle. Yeah. RJ Parent with one of the best rap songs out there. No role models to speak of. That's a great one. And yeah, LFA longtime champ Sanders. He was with RFA too, if I'm not mistaken, before coming into the UFC. It is a tricky one, so I always throw it on over to Fight Night Picks over on Instagram. We post the pictures early in the morning, or sometimes early in the afternoon, for these shows. You get the opportunity to vote on them. We get a better sense of what the fans are thinking. If you look at this fight, Matt, 55% of fans going with Felipe Colares to 45% that have Luke Sanders to get the win. If you look at the odds for this one, and I guess you might as well, Luke Sanders about a minus 140 coming in right now, plus 110 for Felipe Colares. So it is a really, really close one. Sean V saying Montel Jackson couldn't put away Colares. So I don't know how Sanders gets it done. Montel Jackson has absolutely snuffed out Felipe Colares in that fight. Sean V went from troll to fan. So I'm just going to go after you a little bit there just to have fun. Overall, Corbett saying Colares by split decision. Kicks Good is already going way out and saying Strickland's going to lose.
Way out?
What's the pick here?
Again, I'm sticking Luke Sanders. He's bit me so many times. Like, he's turned into the male equivalent of Claudio Gadelha for me at this point. I'm still going to stick with him because here's the good news. If he wins this fight, I'm right and I look smart. If he loses this fight, it's probably it for his UFC career, and I probably don't have to pick him in the future, and I don't really have to worry about him messing up my nights or anything, so I am going to pick Luke Sanders, possibly for a last time.
It is a really, really tricky fight. Like I said, at the start of the week, again, Colares with only the 11 fights. For Luke Sanders, a total of 17. If you go over to Tapology, 2,800 predictions, 70% going with Sanders. I'm going to flip the pick. I mean, it's just one where, again, I didn't really have a good read on it at the start of the week. I know a lot of people are saying that Colares looked good on the scale. That's a poor kind of judge as to who's going to win the fight. However, I will talk about somebody who looked terrible on the scale later on, and I didn't have her at the start of the week, and that kind of tips my hand. But I'm going to go with Luke Sanders. Again, this is one of those garbage picks. It's like waiting on Big Baby Davis to bloom in the NBA. It's just not going to happen, and he's going to disappoint you. So, Matt, we both have Sanders in that one. And then, from the start of the week to the rest for the remainder of these fights, we had the same picks at the start. So, our next fight, we have Andreas Mikhailidis taking on the Canadian KB Bhullar. And, Matt, Canadians have two opportunities to pick up big wins this weekend. We have 10-10-1, Randa Markos.
Not great.
And we have KB Bhullar, who just experienced his first taste of defeat his last time out. He took on Tom Breeze. He got hit by the power jab, the Trevin Giles special. But for Tom Breeze, it looked good. And then Breeze was like, oh, okay, was it that easy? I'm just going to go there and I'm going to hammer down. And that was it for KB Bhullar. He comes out this time. Well, he's got less hair and he's got less beard. And he looked all right on the scale. He's taking on Andreas Mikhailidis, and I get it. A lot of people were saying, you know, you look at the guy, KB Bhullar, he's a taller guy, he's longer. Mikhailidis, not the bigger fighter. But if you see Mikhailidis at 205, he looked half decent. But traditionally, he's a middleweight. This is his division. And I saw some people saying early on, before we even started, hey, Mikhailidis has been submitted before, yada yada. This guy's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a European Jiu-Jitsu champion. Sometimes you're going to win and lose by jiu-jitsu, but you can get better throughout your career. So Mikhailidis, he can strike for sure. He throws a lot of really good kicks, but KB Bhullar, his specialty, Taekwondo, this makes for a really interesting fight and possibly a clash of styles. I'm interested to get your thoughts here.
KB Bhullar's never on balance, and that's a concern that I have. He doesn't really do anything where he has both feet planted and he's throwing with power. It's just a lot of show to his strikes, and I don't mean that there's no power on the end of them. Brad Tavares, his brother's training partner's friend, don't come after us in the comment section. But what I do say is, KB Bhullar throws a lot of what I'll call like pretty techniques, a lot of spinning back kicks and whatnot, doesn't always land them, and it's just kind of confusing. And at a certain point, it's just going to hurt your cardio, and you're not really helping yourself with all those techniques. I do think Mikhailidis, if he can just stay constant with his pressure, and at least stay not close enough to Bhullar where you're kind of crowding everything he can throw, but close enough where you're crowding his kicks, and you're not really letting him get off on some of his longer range techniques, I do think Mikhailidis should be able to win this fight. It's just with Bhullar, there's such a big question mark coming into the UFC, because I think, I don't want to speak for both of us, but I don't think either one of us were very impressed with him on his way into the UFC, and then after his one performance against Tom Breeze, I still feel the exact same way about Bhullar now as I did on his way into the UFC.
Going into the comments section, Sean V, I apologize. It's just, to me, Montel Jackson absolutely beat Felipe Colares quite well. But you're right, he couldn't put him away. Now, if we have a look in the chat, Matt, there's people going all the way up to Cub Swanson, Prince Vegeta's son saying Taekwondo immediately bail. Yeah, well, I mean, it didn't work for Pettis' last time out against old Clay Collard. But yeah, to me, I like Andreas Mikhailidis in this fight. If we have a look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, you know, you got 57% Mikhailidis to 43% Bhullar. I saw somebody earlier in the chat saying that, you know, with I almost said RJ Bhullar. I meant to say KB Bhullar. But with KB Bhullar, Dan Hardy picked him at the start of the week to win because something about he's a cerebral fighter. But I'm not changing it. Again, you know, this is one of those fighters that we did so much tape study for his debut, and it was like, yikes. The Matt Dwyer fight was interesting because they both got tired. It was a 5-round fight, what have you. But I like Andreas Mikhailidis in this one. I was halfway tempted to throw this in the question mark kicks parlay, but again, this weekend's just kind of a crapshoot. But I am going with Greece's Mikhailidis in this fight.
Yeah, I like him quite a bit as well.
All right, Matt. We'll continue on. Odin Turnbull saying, morning, boys from Australia.
What's up?
How's she going on the best coast? Because, yeah, you could say that in Australia. You don't have to do West Coast, East Coast, although they do. But Matt, our next fight, we have Loma Lookboonmee taking on Sam Hughes. And I'm eager to see what people are saying in this one. Because you got Thailand's Loma Lookboonmee, former training partner of one King Casey O'Neill, who's now in the flyweight division with the UFC. She trains out of one of the more acclaimed gyms of late with Tiger Muay Thai, the Hickman brothers. And listen, she grew up in a Muay Thai gym, in her father's Muay Thai gym. Made it to Tiger. She's taking on Sam Hughes, somebody that doesn't come out of one of the biggest gyms. But what you did see out of her last fight, even in the injury against Tecia Torres, you know there's a good relationship between corner and fighter. You know she's going to make the mid-fight adjustments. And if you go back and watch her fight against one Vanessa Demopoulos, she was winning until she didn't. She had a 30-26 going into the 4th round and got stuck in that weird Hail Mary Demopoulos sub she goes for just about every fight. And it happens. But with Sam Hughes, very, very well-rounded fighter. Kicks good saying Hughes is going to win by upset. To Mr. Fields, it says Hughes sucks. I don't think that's true. I think she's a decent fighter. She just fought Tecia Torres on days' notice.
But she didn't look good in that fight, and that's the problem. Like, my issue with Sam Hughes is, well, I know you're not in the top 10. And that's pretty much it. And that's the real issue with a lot of these fighters. They throw someone in on short notice against one of the top-ranked fighters in that division, and then they obviously lose that fight because that's what's going to happen on a few days' notice against top-ranked fighter, and then you're just kind of left in this weird sort of purgatory in the division where it's okay. I know you're not as good as Tecia Torres, but I know you're probably better than... Yeah, exactly. So this fight is Loma Lookboonmee. I really do think we're going to learn a lot about both fighters because if Loma goes out there and looks really good in this fight, then you know, okay, Loma is finally ready for maybe not a top 15, but one of those borderline top 15 strawweights, and then maybe we can see what happens next. The problem for Loma is this isn't her division. I know we talked about this with some other fighters, like Jin Yu Frey is always one that comes to mind, but the problem with Loma Lookboonmee is she really is an atomweight fighting at strawweight. And that is going to be a big concern for her, fighting the majority of these fighters. But the one thing I do like about Loma Lookboonmee is she realized, okay, I'm the smaller fighter, so I have the smaller center of gravity. I can defend takedowns a little bit easier, so let's just make my whole MMA game around defending takedowns and trying to beat people up on the inside. And she does a really good job with that. So my issue is I do think Sam Hughes is just going to try to get this fight into the clinch a lot, but by going into the clinch, you're just going to get eaten up by Loma Lookboonmee time after time after time. So I do see this being a tough fight for Sam Page. If she is able to get to that clinch, maybe she can hold Loma Lookboonmee up against the cage again, make this a boring fight, and maybe just try to win rounds that way, but it might be a tough fight for Sam Hughes.
If you have a look at Fight Night picks for the votes on this one, 74% going with Loma to 26% that have Sam Hughes. If you have a look at the odds, and this is where the Fight Night picks *kicks parlay starts. But if you look at it for Loma Lookboonmee, she's about a -400. For Sam Hughes, +300. There's not a lot of value there, but where the value is to me is the fight goes to decision, -250. That's the first leg. So yeah, I could see it going to Sam Hughes, kind of grind out a win here. She could. Does Loma Lookboonmee go in there and outstrike Sam Hughes and defend some of the takedowns? That very well could happen. But I don't see either woman finishing this fight, so that's kind of what I'm going with. Now, sometimes people get mad when I do that at the start of the week. You do. But for me, like I said, I'm going with Loma Lookboonmee. I haven't changed my mind over this week. And there are some people over there in the chat. I mean, let's see. Anybody even talking about this fight? Nicholas Thompson saying Sam Hughes isn't the largest fighter. That much is true. And Prince Vegeta-san saying Sam Page, let's wrestle. I've got Loma.
As do I.
Matt has Loma as well. Matt, our next fight, we have Poliana Botelho take on Luana Carolina. And her nickname's Dread, but she had to cut those dreads, and she looked gone on the scale. She weighed in 128.5. She missed weight. She didn't look very good. You don't like to see that. I had Poliana Botelho at the start of the week, and we can talk about the fight and their skills, and we will. But I haven't changed the pick since the start of the week. I gotta say that.
No, people like to get on me because I like to bring up ACLs and whatnot and how that's a big problem. You know what's always been big red flag? Almost dying the day before a fist fight. And I don't say that with, any kind of humor in my voice. Like, major weight cuts like that are extremely serious. And for you to get that much water out of your body and then all of a sudden just expect the next day to be healthy enough to get into a real fist fight, it just is concerning. Like, we've seen this before. I forget what her name was, but there was that female UFC fighter who fell off the scale twice, and they were still thinking
Yulia
Stoliarenko, thank you. And they were still thinking about letting her compete. Like, weight cutting really is a huge issue in this sport, and of course, issues like this are going to keep on happening. Hopefully, if one championship says to have fixed weight cutting like they said, they could let maybe everyone else know how they fixed it, but no. I do like Poliana in this fight, and I liked her at the start of the week, but like you had said, if I liked her at the start of the week, now I know that her weight cut, I'm not saying her weight cut was good by any means, but I realized that she was able to make the weight at least safer than her opponent. I still have to stick with Poliana.
Yeah, I mean, for Poliana Botelho, both of these women have the same background. One's a Muay Thai champ in Luana Carolina, two-time state champ, two-time national champ. For Poliana Botelho, she comes from the better gym with Novo Uniao. You see the training partners there, but you also see the technique. She can get really aggressive, so maybe with Luana Carolina, she can back up, but she can always throw out that left hook. You see a lot of really tall, rangy fighters, like almost like a Luke Rockhold, but she doesn't really move her head either, and that was one of the things that we saw commentary really kind of get upset at her, but I really don't like that weight miss. That is a huge concern. Luana Carolina does have jiu-jitsu. She didn't have it against one Ariane Lipski last time out. That also concerns me because
Lipski's not good.
Lipski's hard to get a read on, but yeah, you don't like it. And if you have a look at the total votes, 76% Botelho to 24% with Luana Carolina. And the other thing I want to say too, because there's a lot of people that are probably saying, hey, what order are these fights actually in? The order that we're going in on *kicks is the right order. They switched it throughout the day, so I went on the UFC's website when I did up the graphics at Fight Night Picks, but now they're all mishmash, so I'll just leave them like they are. Go through, make your picks there. Kicks good saying Carolina didn't look good on the scale. Ground and pound by Botelho to finish her. AG is saying, SOS saying that looks horrible. Remember Cyborg crying while weight cutting. Yeah, you're right. So again, I can't take Carolina in this fight. If she wins, cat's pajamas, but both of us going with Poliana Botelho. Our next fight, we have Kamaka III taking on TJ Brown. And a lot of people were talking about this fight this week. We had the interview with Kamaka, which was actually really insightful. He's now training out of Extreme Couture, no longer in Hawaii. He moved his whole family over to Vegas, and he's got that quality training partner at Couture. I mean, Mads Burnell, Jeremy Kennedy. How many non-UFC, former UFC fighters can I bring up the train there?
Quite a few.
Dan Ige another guy at the top of the heap, among others. Boston Salmon was another one that he brought up. For TJ Brown, he spent a little bit of time at Glory. He made the weight successfully this week. He actually weighed in half a pound less than Kamaka. You like to see that. And this is a guy at Westside MMA. that is a main training partner of Bryce Mitchell. We saw Dakota Bush in his corner, but if you're going to Glory, you've got a buzzsaw of an amount of training partners there as well. So I like this fight from a technical standpoint. From Kai Kamaka, very well-rounded. From TJ Brown, he's going to wrestle. He's going to try and get position. He's going to try and submit you. This should be a really fun fight.
It should be, but here's the thing. I just think Kai Kamaka can defend the takedown well enough and keep his back off the cage long enough to win this fight by decision. I'm not saying he'll be able to for the entire fight. And I'm not saying he won't get taken down once. He might get taken down 2, 3, maybe even 4 times. Hopefully not 4 times. But if he is only taken down a few times, I do think he can get enough done on the feet to where TJ Brown, if he is getting the takedown, he is going to have to pay for it on the way in. And maybe Brown will be able to secure the takedown and secure enough top time long enough to win those rounds. But I do think that Kamaka, if he can keep this fight on the feet, keep it at range, use his jab enough to keep this fight as far away from TJ Brown as possible. Because the closer you are to Brown, the less time you're going to have to react to his takedown attempts. So if Kamaka can keep this fight in the open space and try to not get his back up to the cage, I do think this is a winnable fight for him.
Brett Z, wasn't Brown training with James Krause at Glory Fitness and MMA and Fitness, whatever it is. Laura Sanko's there as well. If we have a look at the total votes at Fight Night Picks, 55% Kamaka, 45% going with TJ Brown. And earlier on in the comments section, and it's hard to have a look at it because it's moving so quick, and we appreciate that. We also appreciate over 500 people watching a preview for a Fight Night, only 114 likes. We would appreciate the like and the sub. There's a lot of people out there that aren't subbed either.
They should be.
They never know when we go live, and then they pop in the chat halfway through, but we appreciate you nonetheless. If we have a look at this one, and Adnan saying Craig parlay on women's fights are very tough to get. That's why you go with the over-under, the fight going the distance, see? But TJ Brown, plus 130 or thereabouts. Kai Kamaka, minus 145. I have a hard time, again, with Kai Kamaka, very well-rounded. Can he pop back up to his feet? Sure. He looked good in that fight against Tony Kelly, but Tony Kelly, I don't really know where Tony Kelly's at. For TJ Brown, I also have a hard time telling you where he's at, because if you look at it, on Contender Series, he beat Dylan Lockard. And if I can break the fourth wall here, I saw Dylan Lockard fight at the old Lewiston Arena, where the Lewiston Maniacs used to play. And wow. Jack, I'll get over to your chat in just a second. But Dylan Lockard fought a really good fighter that was on Man vs. Bear, and Jesse Erickson. And I know this sounds like I'm making all this up, but it's true. I can back it up. And he beat Jesse Erickson really easily and then got a shot on Contender Series. And I went, what? Dylan Lockard? Really? TJ Brown's going to get the win. Brown won that fight. And in the UFC, it's been so-so. So, like Jamie Nadeau is saying over in the chat, tough pick. He's also saying I like Kamaka a lot, but Krause is putting out winners. Yeah. That's true. But yeah, it is a tricky one. To get to Jack's comment, people in the chat say Yuri has a chin. Check out the photos of him without his beard. He definitely does not. Yuri Warhair Prochazka still beats Reyes by first round TKO following a flying knee. Jack, thanks for supporting the channel.
That's a mystic prediction right there.
That is. Maybe you should invest in a whiskey company and get $600 million.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe with mystic predictions. But I'm still going with TJ Brown. Again, I like the wrestling. Could Kamaka outstrike him? Well, Kamaka's really got to incorporate a kick. We saw Danny Chavez have a lot of success with that against Brown. That's kind of his kryptonite. And AG saying TJ's going to gas midway through the second. Maybe that's because of the weight cut, but I think he's had enough time to really get the weight dialed in, to get the training and the cardio dialed in. I like Brown here.
Yeah, it's not an easy fight to predict, but I do still like Kamaka. I think he can just do enough to keep this fight on the feet and at least win enough moments throughout this fight to be able to get the judge's decision at the end.
Both of us going with downtown.
I'm going with Kai Kamaka.
Brown. Oh, you're going with Kamaka. You had Brown at the start of the week.
No, I've got Kamaka now.
You've got Kamaka now. All right. I've got TJ Brown. Next fight, Matt, we have Randa Markos. She's 10-10-1. She's trying to stay above water, that 500 mark. She's taking on Luana Pinheiro. And this is a tricky fight. You've got TJ Brown trained by James Krause, also Spartan versus Bhullar, first round KO'd, back to working as accountant. I don't know. You think that KB's going to get knocked out? I'm assuming. Is Andreas Mikhailidis an accountant? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know their personal lives. I
wish I could help you more.
I just know the results in the cage. But over here, Matt, Randa Markos taking on Luana Pinheiro. It's a tricky one, right? Because for Pinheiro, grew up learning judo. She wanted to be the next Ronda Rousey in MMA. You look at the recent performances. She gives up position. One of the weird things she does, she'll jump from guard to mount or half guard. She'll jump right into mount. She'll lose the position against lesser wrestlers. They'll get out of it. But then all of a sudden, once they're up to the mat, she'll do like a Montserrat Conejo, and she'll grab them, and she'll just throw them down. She'll get on top of them. Like, she does a lot of weird things. So Randa Markos, with her background and her wrestling, maybe she can capitalize. Maybe she can weigh heavy in this fight. Maybe Pinheiro gets some of those, early UFC jitters like we saw with Adrikas Duplessis. But Luana, she circles away from the power. She throws really well with her strikes. I just think she's a more well-rounded fighter. But the more battle-tested fighter is definitely Canada's Markos.
But this is the problem. Okay, LeBron James had a quote, and he came back from a 20-game injury at a high ankle sprain. He said, I don't know if I'll ever get back to 100%. And that's like, if you care about basketball, that means a lot. If LeBron's like, I might not be able to be what I was a couple months ago. LeBron James is the same age as Randa Markos. He doesn't take any damage game in and game out most of the time. Like, I'm sure he's a little banged up here and there. Randa Markos at a time was one of those fighters that Craig and I would point to and say, hey, she might not win every fight, but she at least makes an improvement between every fight. And yes, she might not win that next level up in competition or every time she takes that step up in competition, but at least she is kind of like, she'll be in the top 10, then she'll kind of jump out. Randa's not that fighter anymore. She is 35, 36 years old now. And for a strawweight, that's just a tough age to be. I don't think she is progressing anymore in her career. And my issue is that I just think athletically, she reached a point that she really hasn't been able to return from, and she's kind of plateaued athletically. There's nothing against that. It's just that's what happens as you get older. And for Luana Pinheiro, I just think she is kind of the not next evolution in women's MMA, but she's going to be the more modern version of what kind of Randa was. So I just think Luana's going to be able to beat her up on the feet a lot. Maybe Markos can get the takedown here and there. I just don't think Markos can keep that really good cardio that we knew her for all those years ago. Because when I think about prime Randa Markos performances, we're not talking about like 2019. We're not talking about 2020. You gotta think back like 2016 time to think about when Randa was really at her best. It's just been a while since we have seen that peak Randa.
To go into the comments section, there's a lot of people, and I kind of agree with a few of these. Brett saying that Nova and Yao cardio and UFC debut, right for Randa to steal a couple of rounds. Hard to bet on, though. That's the whole card. What else did I see? Randa Markos would submit the king. Well, maybe. Clay saying anything good to say about any of Pinheiro's past opponents? Not a friggin' chance. She beat Stephanie Frosto, who on Contender Series, they did like the interview and she's like, yeah, I get into it to lose weight. And then they go into the fight and it's like, yeah, this is going to be a hard fight for Stephanie. She's 8-6. Helen Harper did a decent job of getting out of really bad positions. Like Pinheiro had her mounted. She got out of it, but she ended up getting the win. Yasmili Arake was 0-2. I mean, Venezuela's biggest export, I guess, of a fighter. Like, that was kind of how they were marketing it. It was really weird, but yeah, I have a hard time. Historic PK saying don't compare her to LeBron. Here's where your comparisons... Here's the basketball comparisons for this fight at the start of the week, and we caught a lot of heat. I talked about Damari Carroll. That one was all right. You compared Randa Markos to the Lob City Clippers, and people got really mad because Randa Markos isn't that explosive.
Well, okay, she's not a 21-year-old Blake Griffin coming out of Oklahoma, but here's the thing. She was one of those wrestlers who, when I needed Randa to go out there and get a double leg takedown, she could just motor her way to one, and that's not the same fighter that we see nowadays. Can she still get those takedowns? Yeah, she can, but she has to be a lot craftier about them. She can't just go out there and run over her opponent, and I just don't think that we're seeing the same fighter who was on The Ultimate Fighter, who was fighting in title eliminators at one point. How wild was that?
Matt, Randa Markos now trading out a Travis Luter BJJ. Pinheiro, the favorite, 72% have her at Fight Night Picks. I have Pinheiro to get the win.
As do I.
Matt does as well. And we'll move on to our next fight. Jackie said, well, somebody said these aren't real names. Then Jack following up with Matt and Craig aren't real names. I didn't change my name.
No,
so
he's Craig, I'm Matt. Hi.
That's been it. They haven't changed. Matt, Dvalishvili taking on Cody Stamann. This is a Stillwell Saturday night type of fight. Oklahoma fans and every other wrestling fan out there in the entire world thinks that this is going to be the best fight. And you have Merab Dvalishvili that just gets takedown after takedown. He ragdolls people. They get back up. He does it again. It's like it's fun for him. He's like the great Khali in The Longest Yard where he's just hitting ping pong by himself. And he can just keep doing it. It's like Merab's out there and he's fighting his own fight again. And for Cody Stamann, very, very good wrestler, but from the collegiate level, and you see his takedowns, normally tries to hold guys down. He's more a position over submission type of guy. He will throw a bit in terms of volume.
No, he won't.
We did see a bit of an increase in his striking. He looked good in that fight. We talked about it, but he looked really good in his second to last fight. Obviously, his last time out wasn't really on the greatest end of it, but if you did go back and watch his last one, yeah, the Brian Kelleher fight, he looked good. The Jimmy Rivera fight, he did not. Jimmy Rivera, really good striker. Jimmy Rivera, really good wrestler. Merab Dvalishvili, different kinds of those, but he's good at them both. What do you make of this one?
So I don't listen to a lot of other like MMA media and stuff. I just don't want other people's opinions to kind of like seep their way into mine. But there was one day I was getting ready to listen to Luke Thomas on Sirius Radio, and right before his time slot, there was a show called Busted Open, and it was grown men arguing about wrestling. And they got to this point. If you're a wrestling fan, you're not gonna like this, but they got to this point where a guy called in and he goes, if Ric Flair's a 30-time world champion, he couldn't have been that good because he lost it 29 times. And some people got very upset.
Donald E. Guys, who has supported the channel for a very long time, hitting us up with a big super chat. So shouts to you, and he wants to hear it. But this is unfortunate because Matt Serra is not going to be in the corner of Merab Dvalishvili. So through the internet, all the way to Vegas, I'll give you one. Come on, Merab! And that's what you will get. And I'll give you a couple more just for kicks. But Matt, I'll let you continue.
So his whole point was, if you've gotten something 30 times and you've lost at 29, you can't be that good. You're just calling yourself 30-time world champ when you've really lost as many times as you've won. My only issue with Merab, and I do think he's going to win this fight, I'll get my prediction out of the way right now, but the only thing in the back of my mind that is concerning is when you look at the absolute volume of takedowns that Merab can get in the amount of 15 minutes, it is impressive. But the thing is, if you're getting 16 takedowns in a 15-minute fight, that means your opponent's gotten up to their feet 15 times. Like, it's something that people don't talk about when they talk about Merab Dvalishvili fights, but it is the truth. He gets a lot of takedowns. He's not great at securing the takedown, though. He does remind me a little bit of Yoel Romero with his wrestling, where Yoel, if the game is only get the person's back to the ground, Yoel would never lose. But the issue is, he's not great at holding people to the ground. That's why you can see people pop back up. With Merab, if you are able to fight and scramble initially, he will scramble with you. And don't get me wrong, he's probably going to at least get the better of the scramble, but you're not going to be giving up a lot of just solid takedowns where you're on your back constantly. I do think the wrestler in Cody Stamann can force this to not just become a wrestling match, to become a scrambling match. Now, will that help Cody Stamann? I don't know. I think he will get out scrambled by Merab Dvalishvili, but I will just throw that out there. There is this little suspicion that I do have that if Cody Stamann's able to at least get up out of a few of these takedowns and start to wear on Merab, he might be able to win this fight.
This is one of those ones that I feel like if you've got it in a parlay, it could bust it. Like, I've seen a lot of people out there on Twitter today really, really confident in this fight, and
I'm not.
Again, like, I'll be as honest as I can about these fights. Like, this is the one that this is one of the ones that I'm least confident. This and the Luke Sanders-Colares fight. I have a hard time getting a read on it. Tamer Assad saying Cody's the better striker. Hopefully I pronounced your name properly on the YouTube. Kicks Good saying, come on, Merab! A better version of Cody. So if you look at Fight Night picks for the percentages, 74% going with Merab to 26% that have Cody. Maybe there's people out there that are really high on Cody Stamann. I want to hear from you in the chat. I'm ever so slightly going to stick with my pick of Merab because I love the cardio, but you can't sleep on Cody Stamann. That's my thing here.
It's just, do I pick Cody Stamann or do I pick the new, slightly refurbished Cody Stamann? Now, I could be wrong in saying that. Maybe Cody Stamann's like, hey, the old is better, but I do think Dvalishvili, he gets a little wild with his stand-up, but the good thing in this fight is Stamann's not the type of guy who can really make you pay for those holes in your stand-up game. I do think Dvalishvili, some of the wildness, he will be able to land with some of those shots and no force this into a scramble fest, and I think if Merab's in a scramble type of fight with pretty much anybody at 135 outside of like TJ Dillashaw and maybe Petr Yan, he's probably going to win. So I like Merab in this fight.
Going up a little bit, Craig P. Higgins saying DraftKings points rack up takedown after takedown, no points for getting back up. So yeah, I mean, if you like Merab, you probably didn't like that fight, though, that he just had in his last time out against one Magic Man, John Dodson. But, yeah, there was another comment. Sticky Boy saying, y'all even read comments? Well, we just read yours. Big Papa saying we rocking with Strickland boys. Or is it too volatile? Let's talk about it, Matt. We have Sean Strickland taking on Jotco. The fight before, come on, Merab! And we both have him to win in that one, so let's make that one clear. But in this one, Matt, really interesting fight. I mean, Sean Strickland, good striker. Christoph, good striker. Garrett Rincon saying, come on, Merab! I'm taking Cody by decision at +2 or 425. And that one makes sense. I mean, a lot of people seeing that fight going to a decision. Stamann, not really all that known for finishing guys, especially in the UFC. Merab, not so much either. I mean, the spinning back fist against Raufeon Stotts, another wrestler. That was a pretty interesting one. Raufeon couldn't put away Keith Lee in his last time out. But Matt, if we do flip it on over, Sean Strickland and the man himself, Christoph Jotco, really interesting fight. I mean, I'm interested to see, and I'm going to stop using that word, but if Jotco starts to kick, and start to cause problems for Strickland. That's kind of been my thing with Strickland ever since he came back, lost his kneecap in that motorcycle accident. It's like, yikes. He was out for a long time. Looked a little stiff, but looked good in his first fight back against Jack Marshman. Looked amazing his last time out, too. I love this fight, and this is why we have this possible fight of the night.
Here's the thing. You say he looked kind of stiff his first fight back. That's just kind of how Sean Strickland fights. Like, there is sort of a stiffness to the way he moves. He's not a guy like Israel Adesanya who has this real flow to the way that he does it. Sean Strickland, he just, like, gets, just like, I don't even know, like a construction worker. This is a job for Sean Strickland, and he just shows up and does his job. The great thing about Strickland, I do like his pressure a lot. Now, the thing about Jotco is he does move really well, but sometimes he just doesn't. Sometimes it's almost like his feet get a little caught up in his movement, and he can get caught off balance. If you look back at how Uriah Hall caught him as he was moving backwards. Now, I don't think Sean Strickland is the level of striker that Uriah Hall is, and I think if those two guys fought, Uriah Hall would win quite comfortably. But what I do think about Sean Strickland is that his boxing and pressure is really just going to eliminate half of Jotco's attack, which is the kicks. And I say half his attack, 70% of what Jotco does is really set up by his kicks. So I just think stylistically, this is a tough matchup for Jotco. If he gets his kick started, could he beat up the leg and the torso of Sean Strickland, force this fight to be at range and get out some of those boxing combinations? Yes, I do think Jotco can have success doing that. I just think as this fight wears on, Sean Strickland will be able to land his shots, and I think at some point he'll be able to catch him with something good. If not put him down, at least hurt him enough to win a decision.
Raul Vasquez, I'm glad you joined into question mark kicks, because Raul, I commented on your comment underneath our video for this, and you had Krzysztof Jotco to win by knockout, and I said, hey, Raul, if you get the win, I will credit you, and that's next week. So, Raul, I'm giving you that right now. Everybody here is going to hear it. If Raul's right, Raul Vasquez gets a shout-out in just the start of our next video. So, there's a lot of people that are going to see that. But, Raul, if you're wrong, well, then you're wrong. And that's about all we can do. I'm glad you tuned in anyway. But I'm going to have to disagree with you. I mean, yeah, could Strickland get outpointed like John W. is saying? Could Jotco start to land the kicks? Could he start to wear on him? Yeah, that could happen. I do think, though, that Strickland does have really crisp boxing. I mean, look at his last fight against Brendan Allen. It looked good. Now, Allen fight over fight looks like a better striker. We saw that where he got so happy with the hands against Carl Roberson. Had to stop myself halfway instead of saying Roberson. I just like Sean Strickland. I really like him up here at 185 pounds. If you have a look at the votes at Fight Night Picks, 88% Strickland to 12% Jotco. Strickland's a pretty big favorite in this one, I would say. If you look at it, minus 385 all the way up. I mean, some sites minus 315. Jotco coming back a plus 230, plus 225. So, Matt, I've got Strickland, not changing my mind on this one.
I do too, and I would expect him to probably get a ranked guy next. I would really assume just the winner of this probably does get a ranked fighter next. Probably a guy coming off a loss. Maybe Omari Akhmedov, some guy around that level. Because I do think the winner of this deserves at least a guy in the top 20 at a bare minimum.
All right, we'll move on to the next one. And Raul, I'm being serious with you, buddy. We move up to our next fight. We have Ion Cutelaba taking on Dustin Jacoby. Is anybody out there in the chat surprised that Dana White didn't do anything after Ion decided to go, hey, we're having a chat here. We're having a real close personal chat. It was like one of those ones in a mob movie where like somebody's getting whacked.
What if he loves Dustin Jacoby? Does anyone know?
Maybe he just tried to shoot a shot, but I thought that was Bush League. I mean, I'm surprised, Dana White was pretty mad at Sean Shelby a week ago.
I was just about to say, like, this just happened, guys. You'd think they'd learn from it. Now, I know in boxing, they'll get them to, like, go behind the shields. I know people are getting vaccinated now. It's a little bit different. But even when they did, like, the Jake Paul Ben Askren, initially, they were going to be separated by something, not just Dana White's kind of arm out front. It just doesn't make any sense to me. We've had this issue happen before, and you would expect them to at least punish the athlete to some degree. Take 10% of his purse. It happened at weigh-in. That's a very weigh-in type punishment. Maybe that's too extreme, but just do something, because you can't have this be happening. You can't have fights be falling off the card. With all that being said, I still think Cutelaba can win this fight. I do think this can be one of those y'all must have forgot fights where it's like, okay, Cutelaba can't beat the guys in the top 15 because he is so wild, because he is so reckless, but he can beat those guys outside the top 15 because he's so wild and reckless. I do think that power lands against those lower level strikers, and not that Dustin Jacoby's not a lower level striker, it's just in MMA he's not one of the elites, so I do think Cutelaba can get this win, but if he can't win this one, I'm going to coin it right now. He is light heavyweights Mike Perry.
A Wright hitting us up in the super chat saying, new to the show, who's the oldest? That's me. Favorite foods? Asking the good questions.
Sushi.
Not a damn chance. I like steak. I like chicken. That new seafood movie really kind of ruined seafood for me. The one on Netflix. Yikes. Look into it. But yeah, it is what it is. Matt, again, so we look at this fight. Ion Cutelaba, wrestling background that we never really see, and he is a good striker. Dustin Jacoby, very crisp striker. He has power on his shots too. There was a couple of comments out there today where people took umbrage with us saying that Cutelaba is the power, Jacoby's the technique, saying that Jacoby, he also has power. Sure he does.
Guys.
You look at his last fight, Max Grecian, really, really close. And then, like you said, with the Mike Perry comparison, how good is Ion Cutelaba? Because we're having fun at the weigh-ins, like Mike Perry, and then we're going out there and we're losing to the best guys. So can we beat Dustin Jacoby? It's a tricky one. If you look at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 59% Cutelaba to 41% that have Jacoby. If you have a look at the odds, as GM is saying, Peruvian chicken, that's good stuff too. Ion Cutelaba, slight favorite, -125. Jacoby coming back around a -105. And Real News MMA saying, look into it. Jamie Nadeau, yeah, that seafood movie on Netflix that the name just, I can't get it. Save the Oceans, is that it? Owner's Key? I can't remember. Yeah, I'm going to believe you on that one. So final thoughts on this.
Ion Cutelaba. Mike Perry was once in a cage after knocking out Alex Reyes, dancing like a rooster and had his hair in a mohawk. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want that to be your claim to fame. You don't just want to be remembered in 20 years as, hey, remember that guy who dressed up green that one time in a weigh-in and he had a couple crazy fights, but that was about it? Like, because that's what Cutelaba's about to fall into. I'm going to predict he wins this fight, but I'm telling you this right now. If he loses this fight, this is it for him fighting guys in the top 20.
Phoenix got it. It was Seaspiracy. I looked it up too. Yeah.
Seaspiracy, I've seen it and I still like seafood.
Yeah, that's sketch though. Still going with Ion Cutelaba in this one. I do have a hard time with it. Again, really close in terms of the odds. But I will go with Cutelaba ever so slightly. Big Papa saying, Amanda Carhart getting it wrong, just going with Seascape. No, we're not looking at a beach. Big Papa saying how you cook your steak. Medium to medium rare. It depends on the day. Cub Swanson taking on Giga Chikadze. Possible fight of the night. A lot of people on the Cub Swanson side, and I've seen that. If we switch it over at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, Matt, it seems to be, 69% going with Giga Chikadze to 31% that have Cub Swanson. And if we have a look at the odds for this one, Giga is favored somewhere in the realm of a -190 to -200. Cub Swanson coming back at a +155. At the start of the week, I had Giga Chikadze. Have I changed my mind?
I hope not.
Not really. I mean, Giga, did he look the leaner guy, the skinnier guy? Yeah, because he's a lot taller than Cub Swanson. And again, Giga, very good striker. His output has gone up throughout his UFC tenure because it seems like he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable in the old sport of MMA. Cub Swanson's a tough test. So you pass the test, you move forward. You don't pass the test, it is what it is. But Giga's been booked against some big guys, or at least there's been rumblings. Finally gets that fight. What are your thoughts?
This is a really interesting fight, really for both guys, because we know how good Cub Swanson can be. At Cub Swanson's peak, he is a top 5 fighter. Now, is that same fighter still there? I don't know. He did have the ACL surgery, and I know I made a big deal about that, and he still knocked out Daniel Pineda. So I still know that Cub Swanson, even at a later stage of his career, still a very dangerous fighter no matter who you put him in there with. I just think a guy like Giga, who is so tall, who is so rangy, who's so technical on the feet that he is just going to make Cub Swanson pay for all that lunging that he does. And this is my problem. People like to talk about Cub Swanson when they think about the best boxers in MMA. I know he's not really at the forefront of that conversation like he used to be, but there was a time where Cub Swanson really was looked at as probably the best boxer in MMA. But my problem with Cub Swanson is he lunges a lot in his power shots. Now, when you're lunging, it makes your power shots land a lot harder, but you're also leaving yourself very open. And with a guy like Giga, who can sneak a knee up the middle, who is so crafty with his kicks, I just think at some point he's going to be able to counter you in a 15-minute fight. And at some point, I do think Giga's going to be able to land on Cub's chin. So I've got to pick Chikadze at the end of the day.
And there's a lot of people over there, and I see the comment from AG. I mean, Chikadze lost to Emmers, and I get it. Like, there is a hype train for sure, and that's the thing. You kind of worry about it. It is a tricky fight. But again, I do edge the Georgian in this one. I like the output going up. If you're beating a guy like Omar Morales that has a good boxing game, if you do win, again, you got to consider this. People in the comments all week were saying, oh, Giga beat Jamie Simmons. Like, that didn't make sense. No, it didn't make sense. It was a stupid fight. It never should have even taken place. I'm surprised it did. It was one of those short notice things. Giga couldn't get a fight. They wanted to keep him busy. And then you look at the way that he beats him. That's my thing. Like, I look at these fighters that are making their UFC debuts or they're a few fights in. If you're beating 0-2, 0-3 fighters in the first round, starching them, you probably should be fighting better competition. For Giga to beat Jamie Simmons that way, it's like, okay, yeah, it reaffirmed that he should be up there quite high. So I do like Giga Chikadze in this fight. It is a tricky one. Laosnon saying you have to go through hell to beat Cub, as Matt says, and that's true. So it is an interesting fight. Unearthed Toys saying almost 700 viewers, less than 200 likes. Smash the like button, show some love. Matt, we got to talk about showing some love. And listen, if you're out there in this world, hey you. Yeah, you got Bush. You definitely do if you haven't tried the best products from our sponsor today. It's Manscaped. Matt, so many people, as the sun now shines on me and it gets incredibly bright, I'm going to have to change the lighting soon. You gotta check out Manscaped. After using these life-changing products, you're gonna want to join a ball sack beauty contest. I'm looking out for you too, because I have an exclusive 20% off discount. Use code FMP at manscaped.com. Matt, we're into May.
We are.
Our original Manscaped sponsorship ended last month. 3 more months of Manscaped. They're supporting the boys, and the products are great. Like, I've talked about it week in, week out, being a shower shaver of my nutsack region. And when I first saw the Lawnmower 3.0 with that nice LED light, I thought, hey, it's pretty cool stuff. It's probably going to work quite good. And let me tell you, it works great. And you've nicked your nuts before. You bought the cheap razors that you find at the department store. They rust if you leave them in the shower. But especially the motorized one, I take them out. But even still, they're not waterproof. This is waterproof. The Lawnmower 3.0, it has skin-safe technology. It works very, very good. And they're dedicated to helping you level up your full body grooming game with the Perfect Package 3.0. If you pick it up, you're going to get the shed. That's a $39 value. Everybody needs a nice toiletry bag. They've got that essential lawnmower, but they also have some more products. Let me dig into my bag of goodies, Matt. We also have the Crop Reviver. It's a ball toner. Spritz some of that stuff on. It works great. They also have the Crop Preserve. It's a ball deodorant. It's like a salve. You pop it up, you apply, you slap that stuff on there. It works very good. It's going to help you. And when you trim the hedges, the tree stands taller. You know this. You've heard this. Be sure to also add their fine cologne to your arsenal. This stuff actually, it's a light, airy type of scent, but it smells like the rest of the great stuff that you get from Manscaped. And they also have the Weed Whacker. And as always, every week, I'm shaving those nose hairs. I still have a nose hair problem. So get 20% off and free shipping with code FMP at manscaped.com. Do yourself a favor and always use the right tools for your bush trimming experience. Matt, people have heard me talk about my nuts, and they're still here.
Okay, before we move on, I'm about to make a bit of a hot take. I think this fight could kind of go like Yair Rodriguez versus BJ Penn. And I'm not saying Cub Swanson is at the same stage of his career that BJ Penn was when he fought Yair Rodriguez. But I just need everyone to get ready to see one of their aging MMA heroes probably get ready to be on the way out. Because I do think this is going to be one of those fights where it's like, okay, Cubs look good against Chrome Gracie, who he turned into a striker that fight, and Daniel Pineda, who's good, but really only has success with his ground and pound submission game and forced him to become a striker. If he goes out there and tries to just strike with Giga Chikadze and doesn't make this an MMA fight, I do see this not going his way at all, and I do see Giga having a lot of success. So a bit of a hot take, I'll throw that out there. I do think this fight could be one of those really one-sided ones by the end of it where you're like, wow, why did the UFC ever make this to begin with?
Matt, let's talk about our main event. We have Dominic the Devastator, because it would have been the Dominator, but he had that respect for Dominic Cruz. ESPN put out a poll on their YouTube community tab like we do, and they put Dominic Cruz versus Yuri Prochazka, and like 78% had Dominic Cruz to beat him. So that's interesting. Wow. But when we look at this fight, we have two really good strikers. Dominic Reyes, as they always say, I want to see it in the comments section. He's an athlete, and he's taking on Yuri Prochazka, a guy that has a Muay Thai background. People said, hey, Craig, you said Yuri doesn't have a good body for MMA. Well, not when he first got in MMA. He looked like a string bean. He looked like me if I tried to fight.
How dare you?
It was weird. But this guy, I mean, like, I feel like all he listened to getting ready for this was like the Forgotten Shaolin album by Wu-Tang Clan. Like, he was able to get his hands on some funky Wu-Tang and just rock it out. And for Yuri Prochazka, he comes into this one. I mean, Conan's song saying Yuri round 1, KO by ultrasonic hair whip. I mean, if you got it, use it. But you look at him, he holds his hands down by his waist, he kind of baits you in, he keeps his chin out there, he has weird head movement, sometimes he gets hit, sometimes Volkan hits him with some of his hardest punches, and he rolls with it, and then he knocks out Volkan Oezdemir cold, and it was disgusting, and it was weird. Matt, Yuri Prochazka, very interesting specimen. You go back, you look at his last loss, it's been years. And that's the thing. It has been years since Yuri Prochazka lost a fight. It was against King Mohammed Lawal, former Bellator champ. He ended up getting him back at Rise in 15. But if you go back to the fight against King Mo and you look at the fights that he fought Satoshi Ishii 2 days before. He beat Vadim Nemkov on that night, and then he fought King Mo. So if you say that he's tired, which I did, that's fine. Aaron Hines is over. I'm going to show Aaron Hines' comment because I got to get at you. You're saying Ryzen is dog poop. I mean, Koji Horiguchi fights there. He's pretty damn good. Like, there's some good fighters with Ryzen, but Yuri Prochazka was getting the wins that you wanted to see, and now he comes into the UFC and he beats a top-ranked guy in Volkan Oezdemir. So it's kind of like started from the bottom. Okay, we meant to be here. And now you're taking on Dominic Reyes that, listen, the arguments are out there that he won the light heavyweight championship. I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to say that Jones won, but whatever. He had a good competitive fight with John Jones. He had a not competitive fight against Jan Blachowicz his last time out.
It was awful, and that's the problem. Like, okay, even before we had made our prediction videos, and you were just trying to see where I was at in these, you were like, wait, you had Reyes, you thought Reyes beat Jones the night that they fought, right? And I was like, well, yeah, but here's the thing. I still thought he was going to lose to Jan Blachowicz in his next fight. That's my problem with Dominic Reyes. His best win is Chris Weidman. And if you get rid of that John Jones performance, and I understand it's very hard to do because he had a tough fight with one of the greatest fighters of all time, but I don't think John Jones is as good as he used to be. So I do think Dominic Reyes had a close fight with a version of the greatest fighter of all time. Is he at his peak? Yes, no, maybe so. Who really knows what he's going to look like at heavyweight? But he had a close fight with a great fighter. Then you go back. Okay, so we had a split decision with Volkan Oezdemir that I thought Volkan won. And here's my problem with Volkan Oezdemir, too. When did he become Rudy Gay? Where it was like, Rudy Gay's overrated, and then it's like, okay, well, he's not that bad, guys. Because that's what happened with Volkan Oezdemir. With Volkan Oezdemir, he's lost a couple fights, and everyone's like, well, he's trash. He's just that, like, hairless white guy, basically. But no, Volkan Oezdemir, like, beating him really means something.
Well, he grew his hair back, and he had a beard his last time.
Okay, he did, but for the majority, he was just like the most jacked version of Pitbull you would ever see. But this is what I mean. Volkan Oezdemir is a good fighter, and I actually think knocking him out in a tough fight really means a lot. And I'm not using MMA math, but the same fighter in Volkan Oezdemir fought Dominic Reyes, and Dominic Reyes started out very strong. But my issue is, look at any Reyes' fight. When things start to go against his way, when the momentum starts to shift, he can't get it back. And I don't really know what that is. I don't know if it's a mindset thing. I just don't know if he gets tired in a fight, and maybe his cardio is not as good as a lot of people think. But I do think there's something to be said for Teddy Atlas's theory about Mike Tyson, where it's you're only as good as your record in fights where you faced adversity. And he always says, what's Mike Tyson's record? What is he, 50-5? Well, no, he's 0-5. Because if you look at the fights where he faced adversity, he never won. And I'm not saying Dominic Reyes can never break that mold, but right now, he's still that fighter. I've never seen Dominic Reyes get off to a great start and then start to do poorly and then all of a sudden get the momentum back. Like a Dustin Poirier against Justin Gaethje, for instance. Normally when things start to go against Dominic Reyes, he can't bring them back. And against Yuri Prochazka, the man has twice as many knockout wins as Dominic Reyes has professional wins in his career. Experience means something, and it means a lot, and especially when you're fighting top levels of competition. And we can pick and prod and say, okay, Yuri was fighting some former UFC vets, maybe a little past their prime, but at least he has this huge body of work against what I would at least consider par competition or above par competition, whereas Dominic Reyes, again, his best win in the UFC is a 20-pound heavier Chris Weidman. And Chris Weidman, leg break aside, it's not like he was on some great stretch before that fight. So for me, maybe I'm not giving Reyes the respect he deserves, but here's the great news for Dominic Reyes. He can prove me wrong in one night. All he has to do is go out there tonight and prove me wrong against Yuri Prochazka, and I'll completely change my opinion on him. But for right now, I have to stick with Yuri.
So if we go over to the comments section, Adnan is saying, what's your second leg to the parlay, Craig? Well, I saved it for this fight, so I'm going to be sweating all night. I have it as a part of this one. So the first one was, fight goes the distance with Sam Hughes and Loma Lookboonmee. Not a crazy take. It was what, a minus? I'm going to go back and have a look. It was a minus 250, so it's not anything crazy. I still like Yuri Prochazka in this fight. It's a toss-up to me. Yuri Prochazka for the win or the over 1.5 rounds. I like both of them. So it is an interesting fight. Go ahead.
I don't know over 1.5 rounds. Denisha's got, I think, 20 stoppages in the first round. I understand in Ryzen, first rounds can be 10 minutes, but a lot of those do happen in the first 5 minutes. So it's not like I'm going against your pick. I just will hazard maybe a little bit against that prop because these are two guys who do have big power. And when you do have two primary kickboxers, especially at 205, it could just get a little iffy when two guys are throwing punches. punches. That's the only hesitation I'll throw in there.
So for me, I'm going with the fight goes the distance in that first fight, Loma and the lady herself, Sam Hughes. And I've got Yuri Prochazka to get the win, minus 125. So if you're playing along at home, that's about a plus 150. I do have a hard time, but again, Yuri Prochazka is such an explosive striker. He can whip the kicks. He can outbox. Dominic Reyes, great kicks. And listen, for a guy that's southpaw, he throws him to the legs. He throws him to the body. That was the thing. Jan Blachowicz went out there and played the Dominic Reyes game and beat him at his own game, and you don't often see that. And so if you look at it, for Dominic Reyes, he's got to start opening up with the kicks. He's got to start pumping that left straight out there to get the win. It is a very, very difficult one. Todd saying, wow, Matt straight up getting upset at the parlay. No, originally, yeah, I had Yuri, so I'm still going with Yuri. Yuri minus 125, and then, like I said, the fight between Hughes and Lookboonmee to go to decision. Christian saying any locks. If you want locks, go hang out with Manpreet. That's his thing. But yeah, I've got Yuri Prochazka to get the win in this one. It's a tricky one. It should be a great fight, and here's what you're going to learn. If Yuri gets a win, I bet he's next in line for Teixeira or Blachowicz. If Reyes gets the win, then he's going to fight, I don't know, Anthony Smith. Like, it's weird.
Maybe it is really weird because this is the thing. In boxing, if you were Dominic Reyes and you had a hard fight against one of the best fighters ever, then you got knocked out, you'd fight 20 guys without a Wikipedia page next, and then you'd have a hard fight. They're throwing Dominic Reyes in on a 2-fight losing streak against a former champion who, again, has twice as many wins just by finish than Dominic Reyes has wins in his career. So this is a very hard fight for Reyes, and if he is able to beat Yuri, it's going to prove a lot about Dominic Reyes, and I will have been very wrong about him. But again, like you, I have to stick with Yuri. Great card, though. Really underrated card.
Really good card. So if it is the first time that you tuned in with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, A, we thank you, but B, there's a lot of stragglers. We're about 700 people watching, only 248 likes. It takes 2 seconds. The subscriptions we appreciate. And check out the podcast. Like, we just had early stoppage drop today. The question was, who are, and I didn't really word it right, but who are current UFC fighters that are going to go to the UFC Hall of Fame? Matt, name 5.
Kamaru Usman, John Jones, Daniel Cormier probably doesn't count, so I'll say Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, Dustin Poirier, Khabib.
I like that. That was more. 6. So, yeah. Throw Andrei Arlovsky in there, too. A lot of great fighters to go with. Matt, let's whip it back down for everybody that's out there. We'll go through this card again. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Matt, Luke Sanders, Felipe Clarisse. I flipped a pick, but this is just a garbage fight. It's really difficult, is what I'm saying. Sanders ever so slightly, but I wouldn't have it on my card.
I quoted J. Cole and George W. Bush, and yeah, I think Luke Sanders is going to get this one done. Normally when I pick him to win, though, he loses, so take that with a grain of salt.
Difficult one. We're both going with Luke Sanders. Tough to get a read on Tennessee's own. Matt, Andreas Mikhailidis taking on KB Bhullar. I've got Mikhailidis here.
I wish I could pick the Canadian, but I can't. I do like Mikhailidis in this one.
Disappointing. We could not go with that. One saying, do or did you attend college? I graduated 2 years ago. And I took a break in between, so that was fun. Matt, next fight, Loma Lookboonmee taking on Sam Hughes. And yeah, we're going with Loma here.
I think Loma, yeah. It's just the problem with Sam Hughes is, I know you're not as good as Tisha Torres. Maybe you're better than Loma Lookboonmee. It's just she never really got a fair shake in her UFC debut, so we're going to learn a lot about her tonight, but I do have Loma.
All right, Matt, we're both going with Loma to get the win. Our next fight, we have Poliana Botelho taking on Luana Carolina. Luana missed weight, and she had to cut off some of her hair and look kind of gaunt at the weigh-ins. I can't go with her. I got to go with Botelho.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Poliana in this one.
Both of us going with Poliana. Hope Mikhailidis gets the win. We got the Greek flag over there in the comments section. Kai Kamaka taking on TJ Brown. Tough fight. We're split on the pick here.
Yeah, I just think Kai Kamaka can do enough to keep this fight in distance. And I do think he'll be able to win those moments apart. So ever so slightly picking Kai Kamaka.
I'm going to go with TJ Brown. TJ Brown, downtown. Matt, we have Randa Markos taking on Luana Pinheiro. And I've got the Brazilian in this fight. Again, we're both in a weird camp where we don't just, beleaguer the point that Randa sucks. She's not that bad. But you look at the wins and the losses, it's tricky. She's been in the UFC for a long time. But Luana Pinheiro, as long as she can mix in the striking and the judo like we've seen, I think she's going to be able to get the win.
Yeah, I agree. I just think we've seen the best of Randa. And listen, you're going to see people's careers where you see them kind of start to finish. And I just think this is kind of the back end of Randa's career. It sucks to say, but I do think Luana should win this.
All right, Matt, let's go into our next one. And listen, Iowa City loves this show. Iowa City's probably standing up for Merab and Cody Stamann. There's going to be people packing the streets getting ready for this wrestling contest as they are in Oklahoma and other parts of the country that enjoy wrestling. Pennsylvania, like Michigan. Well, definitely Michigan. We have Michigan's own Cody Stamann taking on Merab Dvalishvili. This is a tough one. Like, Merab's a big favorite. I think Cody Stamann has more of a shot than the odds would say, and even the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, but I will ever so slightly go with Merab, but I have a hard time.
Yeah, I do think Merab's going to be able to get this done. My issue is Merab will have to show me something, at least moving forward, that he can beat guys in the top 15 who don't just have similar styles to himself. If he beats Cody Stamann, that's great, but you just out-wrestled a fellow wrestler. You're going to have to go against someone who at least stylistically will offer you up something differently, so hopefully Merab, if he is able to get this win, should be in there with someone who will offer him a different show.
Matt, I can't pronounce the name that's over in the comments section, but I can pronounce what they wrote out, so we're both going with, come on, Merab! To get the win.
Yeah.
We look at our next fight, Sean Strickland, Jotco, Striker's Paradise. I have the United States of America's own. Come on, Sean Strickland.
I do think Sean Strickland will be able to get done. I just think his pressure and overall boxing will be a little bit too much for Jotco on the inside.
All right, Matt, we move into our next fight. We have Ion Cutelaba taking on Jacoby. What have you got here?
Hey, Cutelaba, don't become Mike Perry. Don't watch this because you're probably fighting very soon. But also, if you are, don't become the next Mike Perry. Hopefully win this fight and then get your career back on track. Because I do think there is a promising MMA fighter there. It's not at the forefront, but I do think there's something promising behind Ion Cutelaba's skill set. So if he is able to get this win, hopefully refine that a little bit more moving forward. Maybe he can crack his way into the top 15 again.
Both of us going with Ion Cutelaba in that one. Matt, we move in our co-main event of the evening. Old Cubber Lang, old Cub Swanson taking on Giga Chikadze. And Juan saying over there, Georgia for the win. You're probably a little bit behind us with Craig P. Higgins saying, come on, Merab. Come on, Merab. But yeah, I've got Georgia's own Giga Chikadze here.
I do think this could be a one-sided fight. There, I said it. I'm going to say Giga by stoppage. I'll go as far as that. I am pretty confident in that. I'm just worried about Cub fighting top-level strikers. I've seen his chin get cracked by a guy like Hanato Moicano, who's rangy and not even that much of a striker. So I do worry a little bit about Cub, especially on the outside. But if anyone could prove me wrong, it probably is Cub Swanson.
All right, Matt. We move into our main event of the evening. As the sun moves by my window and I need blinds, we have Dominic Reyes, Yuri Prochazka. It's a tough fight. The odds are close, but I am going out on a limb ever so slightly with Yuri Prochazka. It's the second leg of the Fight Night Picks question mark kicks parlay. I've got Prochazka and Hughes Loma to go to decision. I love the fight, though. I mean, popping popcorn for sure.
Oh, without a doubt. Tonight we're going to learn what's better. Training in the woods and yelling, or just doing a lot of sports in high school. Now, Dominic Reyes played the most sports in high school. Don't know if you've watched any of his promos. I just don't think that's going to be enough. He just doesn't have a lifelong background in any martial arts. My problem with Reyes is, if you look, he was a high school wrestler and then didn't go to college for wrestling. Instead decided to go to college for football and forego the wrestling. So he could have had a background in more of a collegiate style wrestling. I know he does have the wrestling in his back pocket from high school, but he could have a more solid foundation, I guess, with the wrestling and chose not to. Nothing against him in his future. I'm just saying, if he went to college for wrestling and not football, I'd like him a lot more in this fight, so I have to stick with Yuri.
Matt, we're 3 likes away from 300. It takes 2 seconds. We got to get above it. You got to help us out. Over in the comments section, Chachi saying best parlay for the night. I've said it a number of times. Chris saying Yuri better put those hands up. I don't think he needs to. It's a style. It worked for him in Ryzen since he's been on his win streak. I think it'll be interesting there. Cody Keller, not a fan, or Kyler, you're not a fan of the man himself, Ion Cutelaba, and that's fine. I think, again, yeah, that was pretty Bush League when that happened. We get above 300, Matt. I love the card. A lot of pop and popcorn. I appreciate the support, too, because, listen, without everybody out there tuning in every week, without the comments, without the likes, without all of that, we wouldn't be where we're at right now. 2020 was insane. 2021, we've rolled stuff out. We got This Week in MMA. Early Stoppage is popping off. We've got more content than we've ever had. We've got the interviews with JHK. There's a Kai Kamaka one up there this week. If you haven't checked that out, do so, please. But there's all kinds of great stuff there, as well as the website, FightNightPicks.com. I mean, you can pick up a jersey like the one that I have. You can pick up the shirt that I have underneath.
You have.
Matt's wearing a jersey underneath, too. That's support. That is support. So, again, appreciate everybody for tuning in out there. Love the card. Love the support. And Matt, as we always say with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt.